Hello, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome. It is Wednesday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And Jimmy, if it is Wednesday night at 9 p.m., we know what time it is.
That's right, it's Black Men Speak. So we want to give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, like the videos, and share a good thought and a good word about our show with friends, family, and those that you want to help enlighten. So, Tom, with some of the administrative stuff out of the way, what is our topic for tonight? That's what everyone comes to see and talk and share with us about.
Well, Jimmy, you know, on Black Men Speak, we tackle the tough subjects and we talk about the things that oftentimes nobody else is talking about. And we have a pretty provocative topic tonight that I'm hoping that we get some interesting contributions in either via call or chat. What black men owe black women? That is our topic for the night. What black men owe black women? And this is kind of something, if you throw it out at some folk, women in particular, you know, they look at it at a certain way, but this is, Jimmy, in my opinion, a a byproduct of some conversations that we've had in the past. And
Yes.
I think that there is some unfinished business that we need to discuss. Over the last couple of weeks, of course, we talked about going back to school amidst COVID last week. Prior to that, though, we had two very intriguing shows about the emasculation of the black man. And then the following week, we talked about
The
the
masculinization of the black woman. Yes.
absolutely the strong black woman complex. And so we had some interesting feedback on those shows. And that's kind of what brought this whole thing to light in terms of what the black man owes the black woman.
And guys, for y'all out there, Tom has a very diplomatic way of stating things. So basically, what he's saying is that we cover the topics that no one else is talking about, to include that circus minstrel show, The Breakfast Club.
Chevy, you just hating on, hating on the hating on that show, Jim. But a lot of people, a lot of people think of the moniker of the restaurant in Houston, Texas, man. And shout out to the Breakfast Club. They have been a phenomenal icon in the Houston community. I've been there myself. They have great food, but that's not what we are here to talk about today.
Yes. So, what do black men owe black women? I believe he says the topic. Well, first of all, Tom, a great deal of gratitude for keeping families together without them.
Right.
And I think
And
collectively, when I
and, and,
say
and, and,
we,
and why don't we talk about this? Why is this even relevant? Why are we even having this conversation? I think before we get to what we owe them, let's talk about why this is even relevant. Why should we even be having this conversation?
well, Tom, primarily because the black woman has had to do more with keeping her families together, raising children, a lot of times by herself more than any other group of women in the world. And that's saying a lot. So that speaks to the strength of the black woman, the character of the black woman, and the fact that she's a stable backbone for the black community because without her strength of character, without her overwhelming desire to keep families together, take care of children, we would have fallen by the wayside a long time ago. We wouldn't have survived to this point to even be talking about all the other issues that we have in our community.
Absolutely, Jimmy. And you know, among the many speeches that he gave during his too very too short lifespan, one of the most interesting and provocative statements that one of my mentors, Malcolm X, made is that the black woman is the most disrespected woman on the planet. She is the um, most disrespected woman and the least protected. That was what I was looking
Oh
for.
yeah,
Most
definitely,
disrespected and
definitely least
least
protected.
and least protected woman on the planet. And in the midst of all of that, Jimmy, she has still shined with class, grace, and elegance through all of these centuries of dysfunction in this community called the social experiment of the United States of America.
True. And Tom, I mean, let's face it, we've talked about this on some previous shows. If you look at all of the civil rights movements, social movements, of our desire to fight for civil rights and equal rights in this country, the black woman has really been at the backbone of it. She's been at the heart and the spirit of all those movements. There may have been some male faces out front, but without her strength of character, without her spirit, without her dynamic ability to keep people together, and when a black woman believes in you and follows you, man, that is saying a lot. Because she's just not gonna be fooled easily, and so she tends to be a mirror or reflection, Tom, on how valid a grassroots movement really is.
Yeah, Jimmy, I would have to concur with you on that. And I don't know who originally made this statement a long time ago, Jimmy, but there was a statement that was said if you really want to understand the culture and the condition of a group of people, you look at its woman.
Right.
And so, with that being said, folks, we want to talk about what the black man owes the black woman. We want to acknowledge, elevate, and celebrate the black woman in terms of how she has worked with, partnered with, and oftentimes had to do a lot of the work, if not most of the work, by herself. Sometimes without the support of the black man in terms of keeping our families together and keeping our communities together, as Jimmy just mentioned. When we consider all of the great movements of our generation, I mean, not even beginning with, of course, during the time in which our ancestors were enslaved in the United States. We talk about the Underground Railroads. We talk about all of these movements in order to free our people, in order to empower our people. A lot of times, with a few exceptions, our women have been the unsung heroes.
Correct. That is correct. So, Tom, you were talking offline a few days ago, leading up to this show, and you made a very good statement. I think this would be a good time to segue towards that statement. We were talking about what are black women owed, and I believe you made the statement. What was your statement about apologies? At the very least, no more apologies.
Absolutely.
Yes.
One of the things that we talked about is no more
No
excuses.
more excuses. That was it.
No
So
more
I want to make
excuses.
sure I quoted you correctly. So,
And
so
that was Jimmy, the unwritten subtitle to this show. What black men owe black women, no more excuses. And all of that is being said that, we have worked together, we have done a lot. We've talked a lot about how the black men slowly has been eroded from the black household and the impact that that has had on the prior two generations, almost going on three generations of young people in our community. And how the black woman has systematically had to really bear the brunt of our fight and our struggle by themselves. And so we're gonna take some time to acknowledge that, to exalt that, to make sure that that is front and center. But now we've also, Jimmy, during this show got to talk to the brothers as well, because I don't think anybody else is talking about this, Jimmy, but there are some brothers who got to step up. And so
Tom, there are
we
not some brothers that have to step up. Collectively, we all need to step up our game. And that's not to say there are not some really good brothers out there who are
and
walking the
there are,
walk, because they are. We had a couple of them on last week.
yes, sir.
But there are not enough of us walking the walk, Tom, where it makes a difference. We need to make sure that this is what we are known for, not a few exceptions to the rule. We got to get past a few brothers being the exception and have enough of us stepping up our game, Tom, where when people think about black men in society, they think about a group of men that at the very least are going to stand up for their women, and they're going to protect their families, and they're going to do whatever they have to do, Tom, to keep them safe. That's your very first job in life. So we can't have our young men being afraid of responsibility, being afraid to step up to the damn plate, being afraid to be leaders. I don't want to hear any more about how women are too bossy, they're too this, they're too that, when they're doing what they have to do, Tom, to simply try to survive and keep their families together. So if you're not there to stand up and provide some leadership, then I don't want to hear about her being too manly or too bossy.
I would agree, Jimmy. We had a show a couple of weeks ago that where one of our callers called in, and I believe this was the show that we did on the Strong Black Woman. And one of our
Yes.
callers and supporters was talking about how she was asking somebody
To change her
um,
all,
to
Tom.
change the oil,
How pitiful could that be?
and it's a good thing that she didn't call this dude out in terms of his name.
I
But
wish you would have.
he asked her, well, why can't you do it yourself? Now, see, their in of itself design requires a beat down. I mean, regardless of whether she can change the oil, change the tire, kill a bug, I don't really care what it is. At the end of the day, we're not talking about just because this is your wife or because this is your girlfriend or something like that,
Right.
whether it's your sister, whether it's a friend or whatever it is. This is where we've got to start, because where I would agree with you 120% is the first thing, and I believe our first responsibility is we have to protect
Yes.
the Black woman.
Yes.
First, we have to protect the Black woman directly and or indirectly. One of the reasons that the collective Black female body politic suffers from a lot of emotional strain, depression, a lot of health anomalies that are a result of the stress and the depression is because she does not feel protected.
Well, Tom, she doesn't feel protected because she's not protected. I mean, let's just face it, say call it what it is, um, and that causes problems in the psyche of any woman. The If you want to get the best out of a woman, I mean, you can look to a lot of different journals, a lot of different books, self-help books. You can even look to the Bible. I mean, it's a very simple process. You have to help her get past her insecure. She's insecure by nature, and she's designed to be that way. But when she's in a secure state, when she feels secure, when she has a roof over her head, she has food, she has, protection from the elements and outside forces, then Tom, she is free to be the best version of her that she can be. And until you get a woman to that state, you don't know how great she is. So long as she's in an insecure state, fighting for survival, worrying about her day-to-day existence, you're not going to see the best of her. You're not going to get the best out of her. You want to get the best out of her where she's worth more than her weight in plutonium or gold, then put her in a secure environment. Stop allowing her to function in an insecure state, trying to get through this world. I mean, that's what you're there for. That's what the guy should be in her life for. And for women out there, if you have a guy, if you're dating, and to me, dating is just the practice stage that leads up to the bigger, more commitment, which is marriage. If he's being a shithead, a dick, while you're dating, then guess what? It doesn't get any better when you get married. So cut any guy who doesn't deserve to have you in his life out of your life, because if you say, "Hey, I need you to check my oil," every time she said check, Tom. She didn't say go change it. She'd want to go check it to make sure it's not too low and she burn her engine up. And he's not man enough to just take 5 minutes to go do that.
I would agree, Jimmy, and I don't care how cute he looks, how fine you think he is, how good you
Right.
may think he is in bed. If that brother isn't there for you when you need him, yeah, I don't care how big or how small it is. If he's the one sitting in the back, I mean, Jimmy, I can't count the number of times. For instance, small thing, but it's huge to me,
Right.
where I may see a sister, a mother, a aunt, a grandmother driving to a gas station. I'm at the gas station picking up, and you see some grown,
Sit in
okay,
the
I'm
damn car
sitting in the car, in
while
the
she
back of the
pump the
car,
gas.
exactly, smoking a cigarette, doing nothing. She's pumping the gas. She's paying for the gas, and he's sitting in the back. And I'm not talking about a little kid. I'm talking about a 4 or 5 year old kid, even though I've seen some probably 10, 11-year-olds pumping the gas for his mother or his sister.
Right.
But this is where I see a grown man
Grown men, Tom. Yeah.
sitting up while the woman is pumping the gas. But I don't want to get too far off track there. Protection is number one, and what you might call the covering, so to speak. Our women should feel like they are protected and they are covered, which leads to what you talked about, Jimmy, which is the security aspect of it. And actually, we've got a couple of comments on the chat. One I think is pretty interesting. And by the way, folks, if you want to call in, call us at one of two numbers, 972
Right.
497 2280. Again, write that down, 972-497-2280. Or you can call on our direct line into the show, 484-841-4618. And then there's a PIN number, 664-356-176. That dials directly into Google Meet. I'll repeat that number again because it's kind of long. 484-841-4618, PIN number 664-356-176. So there's a question from one of our listeners that says, what are the men known for in today's world?
Well, Tom, unfortunately, what too many of them want to be known for, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole pimping concept. Folks used to walk around talking about pimping, and now you have men our age and older, Tom, talking about big pimping. I'm like,
Which
okay,
means what?
pimping is when you have a woman that you get money from. Big pimping is when you have a woman who totally takes care of you. I mean, she goes out and works, pays all the bills, put money in your pocket. You know, you get to drive around in the car while she's working, and you can't even be there on time to pick her up from work or to pick the kids up from school. So why we ascribe, Tom, to this whole big pimping concept and how black men got on this path is beyond me. This is the most trifling thing I ever heard of in my life. For us to be shooting for as a goal is to have a woman take care of you. And there's
Jimmy,
nothing more pitiful or sorry than that for us to have as a goal in life.
Jimmy, I have an idea as to where this came from, and it comes to one of the other responsibilities of a man and what we owe black women. And it starts with the father, and it's called ESTEEM. It's esteem.
Okay.
Because when a father is in his daughter's life, when a father figure is in a young woman's life, what he does is he esteems her. He gives her a sense of identity. He gives her a sense of understanding. He also protects her and puts his shroud of protection around her, just like the father does his son in a biblical sense.
Right.
And when he esteems her, she understands her value and her worth. And when a woman understands her value and her worth, pimping and big pimping is not an option. Sure. Because she understands her value. She understands the role of a man, but she also understands her role because typically the first man that a girl falls in love with is her father, not from a romantic sense.
Correct.
But the first man that a young girl falls in love with is with her father. And when he instills that esteem in her, she's not going to just put up with anything. And so when I tell this story and I can believe it, even though it's a shame. I have a cousin, female cousin, who says she met a guy out, I forgot they were at a party or whatever the case is, and they switched numbers. And, a week later, they started talking on the phone a couple of times. And after about a month, this guy, I think they're probably in their probably early 30s at this time. He has the gall to ask her for some money to help pay his rent. He acknowledged it, to help pay his rent because he spent all of his paycheck on some shoes. And he did not have enough money to pay his rent because he blew his money on some shoes. First and foremost, Jimmy, I'm sorry. A lot has changed since I grew up. There is no way that I would be asking a woman for some money, number one. And number two, I would not be asking her for money to pay my rent because I blew my paycheck on some overpriced tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes. And Tom, I wouldn't be willing to bet, hundreds to dollars, that this is not the first time he's done it. That for him to get the gall to ask a woman for money to pay his rent, that those words probably came off his tongue just as easily as you and I are speaking, Tom. No trepidation whatsoever. It came quite easily for him. Why? Because he's done this before. And why has he done it before? And why is he still doing it? Because there are silly women out there who are giving him the money, just to have a guy in their life. So, once again, this is the pimping with the small p, I'd imagine, that you just get some money from women. And he's going to grow and escalate from there to get to a point where a woman just totally take care of him.
I would agree. And Jimmy, we talked about this on some prior shows, but in my opinion, when a man is raised by a a father, a patriarch, a strong male figure, what we would call an alpha male, there is no option for having a woman to take care of him.
Right.
There is no option. There's not a part of his playbook to have a woman take care of him, paying his bills, and doing everything from him. I mean, that's the flip side of it. But unfortunately, Jimmy, over the last two going on three generations, we now live in a community where our women are raising our boys, and
True.
so what they know is a woman taking care of a man because that's the model that they've seen. And in the
Correct.
case where there is not a patriarch, where there is not an alpha male figure or role model in that environment, that's what they know. And they wear it as a badge of honor to have women taking care of them.
True. Very true, Tom. And that is nothing to be proud of whatsoever as a man. And unfortunately, these young boys grew up in a twisted world, Tom, where up is down and down is up. And it's amazing to me, Tom. There are some psychologists today that are coming up. Peterson being one of them. And there are a couple of them that I started to follow. And I listen to them. I read some of their papers. And Tom, the things that they're peddling today hadn't changed very much since the Norman Peale days, 70 years ago almost, in this whole self-help industry, or just common sense advice that a father would give to his son, his daughter, and managing his household if we were during a time when men had common sense. Men knew they had to go out and work and be responsible. They knew they had to be the strong father figure in the household for the kids. They had to be a responsible partner for their wives, that someone she could count on. There's a reason, as Chris Rock say, you save the big piece of chicken for dad and don't eat it for a reason, Tom, because you wanted to do something, no matter how small it was, if it came down to chicken, to make sure that you showed some appreciation for the bills being paid, for food being put on the table, for a roof being put over your head. Where is that today, Tom? The fathers are not there to exercise and provide any kind of common sense. You mean to tell me that you need to go buy a book from someone to tell you to be responsible in life? That your happiness in life comes from your sense of responsibility and leadership, and how you raise your children? People used to be proud of their children and the accomplishments of their children, and that's because they had a hand in raising those children. Today, people who are not there, who are not engaged, you have no sense whatsoever, Tom, of appreciation for what their children, how their children have turned out, and whether they turn out to be good people or bad people, Tom. If you're not there, then you're not invested in the process. And we have far too many kids where there are not enough parents invested in the process, because one parent is working way too hard to try to maintain and keep everything afloat, while the other parent is not there. And that's a shame.
And that would be number 3 on my list. After protection, after esteem, there would be responsibility. And you spoke to it directly, Jimmy. Being responsible for the decisions that you make and the actions that you take. And I don't believe that there is any greater responsibility that a man has than to be able to raise his own children. Now, obviously, in some cases, Jimmy, ideally speaking, everybody's under the same household, and he is able to partner with the mother of his child, of his children, being able to esteem those children, being able to raise strong boys, because it's much easier, of course, to raise strong boys than to repair broken men.
That's correct.
But the responsibility of fatherhood, the responsibility of that's a pretty big puppy, Jimmy. But the puppy is agreeing with you. Yeah. But the responsibility of fatherhood in particular is probably one of the greatest issues, Jimmy, that we have to deal with, because today 75%, I don't know if it's up to 80% yet, of our households are single female headed households. And Jimmy, it looks like we may have a caller coming in.
Okay, great.
Do you know how to answer it? Okay, there we go. There we go. It looks like
you automatically jump in.
All right. Hello, caller. Welcome to Black Men Speak. Speak up and how may we help you?
Well, I'm wondering because we've been talking in community wise, males and females, about this issue now for quite some time. What do you think it's going to take to get things moving, to get those roles reversed, where the men would be more responsible, where the men would become leaders in the household, where they may be proud? What do you think it's going to take?
Very good question. What say you, Jimmy? And I'll add to it.
Okay. I think,
And stay on, caller. So if you have a
yes.
follow up question, you can do so. Go ahead, Jimmy.
And this is not to shift responsibility to the woman, but I do think it's going to take a choice by black men to step up and do things differently. But also, it's going to take black women not accepting anything less than a good man in her life. Don't accept some piece of crap guy just to have a guy in your life. That is very bad, especially if you have children. You're better off without some problem in your life for your kids to see and think that that level of dysfunctionality is acceptable, because it's not. So you want a guy who's going to take the responsibility of heading a family seriously. That doesn't mean he's not going to make mistakes, because he will, because this is new to him. When he does make mistakes, you have to let him know that I'm going to be by your side. We're going to get through this, because this is something that we're doing together, and I understand you're going to make mistakes, but we have children here. We have us involved. If there are no children, then at least there's us, and we have to become very good decision makers. I expect you to become a very good decision maker at some point. So I know that you're going to make some mistakes, but as long as you're making the mistake, trying to make things better for us, then that's something that we can live with, as long as we can correct it and fix it and grow from it. But what I can't have is you making mistakes and not growing from them. That is just not going to happen. That bar, that is not to be born. So black women, set the bar high. Set the expectations high for black men. Let them know that you fully expect, and without excuses, like Tom said earlier. I don't want to hear the excuses about somebody keeping you down and keeping you back, and the reason you can't grow or get promoted to keep a job or contribute to this household. All those excuses, throw them out the window. Along with him, if he's going to continue to make them. But if he wants to have a family, if he wants to have a good woman by his side, he wants to be head of household, then that comes with being responsible. And you're not just talking the talk. I mean, this is demonstrating that you're capable of doing that. And if you do that, I'll follow you to hell and back with no water, if that's what it calls for. But I'm not going to follow you around the block if you're being irresponsible and sorry and pitiful.
I would agree, Jimmy, that there is some responsibility on the woman's side if she is with the man and she's trying to find some things out. So she does need to find out, number one, does he want to be a father? Not does he want to contribute towards having a child, but does he want to be a father? And what is his role? Ask him. What does he believe his role is in being a father or being a husband? Or being a leader, and listen very intently and very close to this, because I credit the woman being the more intelligent typically and the more intuitive typically
Yes.
of the two species. And so you guys can listen. You may not act on what your intuition is, but listen to them and you know what the deal is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the other side of this. We as men have to hold men accountable, whether it's our friends, whether it's our own brothers, whether it's our fathers, in terms of stepping up and being responsible for the actions that we take and the decisions that we make. Even if you see something as silly as someone slapping around a woman. I mean, at the end of the day, it may be his girlfriend, it may be his wife, but when somebody knows, regardless of the circumstances, that you are willing to literally risk your life to protect and defend your woman, then that's going to jog somebody's manhood into shape.
Right.
And I've seen this happen on a couple of different occasions. And when a woman knows that a man is willing to literally put his life on the line to protect her, that's a whole different equation. because we got a couple of different things. We have our sisters who have been assaulted, in the public domain, and then we also have the situation where our sisters have been assaulted within our own families, in our own households. Right. And that is part of the luggage that we've had to have a very clear and serious conversation about. But more importantly, we have to hold our brothers accountable when we know that they are exploiting and or using a woman. And so that's what we have to hold our own brothers accountable for.
And Tom, we're in sync on this. We've talked about this so many times before. And so for ladies out there, please hear the words that Tommy just said, and I've said myself plenty of times. If you are thinking about marrying someone, or even if you're married to someone, and you want to know where his heart is, just like Tommy said, ask him what his intentions are and what is he willing to do to keep his family safe, keep you safe. If at the very least, if he's not willing to die for you, lay it down for you, then he doesn't deserve you. So then on the flip side of that, Tom, you need to make sure that you're someone worthy of dying for. You don't want to be an aggravation to a man's life where, he's thinking, no, she's not, we may be married, but she's not marriage material. And so you don't want those kind of thoughts creeping into his head. So be the best version of you that you can be. Create the best surrounding that you need to be that kind of person. And if you have a man in your life that's not totally there, work with him. Sit down and work with him to get him there. And if he needs to go consult with other men, to get advice on some things that maybe he should incorporate in his life, send him to Black Men Speak.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Caller. Do you have any other thoughts or questions or follow-up?
Well, one of the thoughts I have is that, in most cases, when in those relationships, when they're dating and everybody's having a great time, and it's such a great time, you think this is someone you want to marry.
Right.
You get to the point of engagement, everything is still wonderful. You get to the point of marriage, everything is still wonderful. You both have decided you want kids. Everything is still wonderful. You're probably in 3 years by now, and then you decide you want to go ahead and have a couple of kids. You're in 5 years, 6 years now, and then it's time to start raising the kids, and that's when a lot more of the challenges rise to the top, because you're unaware up to this point what type of father the father really will be, how supportive the father either will or will not be. You both have different ideas of parenting. You have different ideas of how you're going to support the kids and different ideas about how you're going to take care of the kids. So the mothers taking care of kids today, they're like, it's like 150%. And the fathers are just present. Present means they're under the roof.
Right.
It's probably the mothers who's taking the kids to practice. Well, the fathers, not sure. They could be at happy hour. Okay, I'm not sure. But, the both people had good intentions. But there's a difference between how both individuals were raised and their upbringing. Therefore, they have different ideas as it relates to how they're going to raise those kids.
And caller, you're absolutely correct. And we may do a separate show on that to talk about the financial strains on a family and what it can cost. And you're right. And I think in the scenario that you just described, sometimes it takes 5 to 8 years for you to realize how deep financially you're into this, and what the true cost of having a family can be. And sometimes that can be too much for people, the strain of that. And so my suggestion is, like Tommy said, these are the things you need to talk about before you get married, before you stand before God, friends, and family and say, I do to each other. This is where you have to have a good financial plan, not where you live up to both paychecks, because you have 2 good paychecks, and so you go out and buy a lifestyle that lives up to that, where you can manage the debt on 2 paychecks, only for something to happen to one of those paychecks, and then that lifestyle is threatened, and no one wants to go backwards in life. So I would agree that those are things that you have to sit down and have a really heart-to-heart conversation with before you say I do, and stick to a good financial plan that will allow you, hopefully, where you can survive off one paycheck, where you can aggressively save a second. So if anything happens in life, you're still
Right.
protected. You can buy time in life. But if you go out and buy the $600,000 house because you both collectively make $300,000 a year, and then something happens with the house, the cars, and everything else, then yeah, that can put some strain on the family. I'm sorry, Tom. Do we have another caller coming in?
Yeah, but I didn't want to answer at the time that you were talking. So hopefully they will call back. So if we do have a caller, someone who just called, do please call back. Well, I didn't want to interrupt while Jimmy was speaking, and
Okay.
I'll give another perspective on that caller, and this is not knowing what you don't know when you're having a good time and doing the courtship process. That's why you have to, number one, qualify. I mean, I'm in sales, so I think qualify. What does that mean? Check the person out in different situations, just like it's a brother's responsibility to check, a woman out in different environments, whether that was around their family, at a restaurant, around their friends, just to see how they respond and react to different things. You have to qualify and check that person out to see how they respond. Even being around other children, whether there's children within their family or otherwise, that's going to be very, very important. In addition to that, looking at their family tree. I mean, they say that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and in a lot of cases, that is true. Let me see if this is a caller right quick, Jim. I think
Okay.
we have somebody else calling. Black man, speak. May I help you?
Oh yeah, I was calling in on your topic about what black men owe.
Good deal, caller. Introduce yourself, and thank you very much for calling. And what questions do you have?
Yeah, my name is Bo. I don't really have a question. I have more of a statement.
Okay, Bo, we're listening to you.
Bo, but you have to have a question when you call in now. That's our rule. But go ahead. Go ahead and make your statement, Bo.
Is to help teach.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bo. Repeat that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think what black men could do the most for the black community
Yes.
is to use condoms and don't maybe make babies out of wedlock.
That's true.
A lot of times, you guys, I hear you talking about the babies and all that, and with the cost and everything, and I think you're absolutely right about that. But however, if they use condoms, we won't be making babies out of wedlock, and then we won't have, 8 out of 10 black kids, born out of wedlock, which leads to black boys graduating high school on a 4th grade reading level. And that is what the national average is right now.
That is true.
I would agree. That's a very good point. And you are right. I mean, I think that when you get in the heat of the moment sometimes and, he's looking good and she's looking good and, the grocery store or the pharmacy is a long ways away, unfortunately.
No, Tom, that's not it.
But I
to
would
the pharmacy is not the issue.
But Jimmy, let me tell
Go
you,
ahead.
I mean, especially, for younger folk, for younger people and some older ones as well, that's a part of that whole responsibility conversation and taking responsibility for the decisions that you make and the actions that you take. And what this brother is talking about, what Brother Bo is talking about is responsibility.
He is talking about responsibility, Tom, but the
I
psyche.
like that point right there. And it's almost, I can also say, I believe what men can also do, a lot of pastors, I just believe this, shame needs to come back. There was a day, I'm 50, there was a day when there was a shame that if you came to church and you're pregnant and you're unmarried. So to me, you should be married before you carry. If we brought back some shame, and I know definitely in my mom's era, you just couldn't come to church if you were pregnant.
Right.
That was some shame. And when you took all the shame out of being pregnant and unmarried, that's how we get to where we are right now. So I'm agreeing with you about the responsibility on both the young man and the young woman. Because from my understanding, it's like 21 forms of birth control for females.
Yeah, you're right.
So if we keep on saying it's always everything on the man's fault, you're going to keep on getting what you get because normally the woman's going to have to carry the baby. birth the baby, and raise the baby.
Right.
So we have to get to that woman. So I think what it somehow older men could teach the younger women what you can do. How about this? The best offense is a good defense. If you keep the other team from not even getting to the 50-yard line, then guess what? They're not going to score. So I believe does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That offense sometimes is a good defense. So if you could teach that woman, that young lady, how not to get impregnated, I believe that would cure a lot of the issues that we have, because I don't know who can speak to young black women today. I don't know who can speak to them. I just don't know. It doesn't seem like anybody can check them about anything.
That's true.
What about the elders? And when I say the elders, the elder women in the family and the elder women in the community, in terms of teaching younger women self-esteem, moral values. These are things that we grew up with.
Glad you said that. That's exactly the only person who can. Now, here's the deal. I don't know when last time you've been to a mall, but when you go to a mall today, sometimes you can't tell who's the mother and who's the daughter.
Wow.
I don't want to get in the weeds about the age, but somewhere you got a woman 40 years old and got a 20-year-old daughter. It's almost like they're either in competition or, the young lady doesn't have a fighting chance if the mother's out there almost, they wear the same clothes.
Well, Tom,
So it may sound like I'm off topic when I say what can the man do, but I'm agreeing with you that it really probably is going to take the elder woman to teach that young lady. No.
well, the teaching used to take place that y'all talking about, Tom.
The vocabulary probably would help, because it just seemed like, young women just run 100 miles an hour and there's no one stopping them.
Hyper aggressive. I would agree.
Well, that teaching used to take place in the kitchen. That doesn't
All
happen
right,
anymore.
that's pretty much what I want to add into the show. I appreciate what you guys are doing and keep up the good work.
All right,
All right,
thank you,
thanks,
sir.
Bo.
All right, let's kind of run with that, Jimmy, because he made some very, very interesting.
I definitely want to run
points.
with it, Tom. So there are two things I want to address that he said.
Okay.
One, that education that we talk about between elder women and younger girls used to take place in the kitchen. There are lots of information that used to get passed and transferred to younger girls just from being around older women, having a conversation as they prepare meals. Sometimes you couldn't join the conversation, but you can sit there and listen and learn. And I don't think that really happens anymore. And then the other thing, Tom, is we have to factor in that there are a lot of men who don't want the woman that's in their life to get involved with another man.
Jimmy, I think we may have another caller here. Wait just a second.
Okay.
God dog it. It looks like I don't know if they hung up or if I pushed the wrong button. We'll give them a minute to call back. So
Okay.
if we do have a caller, please do call back. I don't know what happened there. Jimmy, go ahead.
So the point is that when sometimes when a guy says I want you to have my baby, what he's really saying is I don't want you sleeping with anyone else. And I know that if you are carrying kids around, that it's going to be very difficult. Very few guys are going to want you as their woman when you have a couple of children that you have to take care of, and I'm not around. So I can always come back and whisper in your ear and get back in the bed with you, and then leave, knowing that there's no other guy that's going to really come and take an interest in you because of the children. Anchor
Jimmy.
babies, Tom.
Yeah, I would agree. And that kind of goes both ways. It's almost similar to the situation where you have an athlete with a lot of promise, a college or a young pro athlete who's unmarried, and you may have a woman who decides to have a children so they can get there you go. If they think they can see a big paycheck, but that may sometimes happen
the
with
paycheck
men as
doesn't
well.
have to be that large, Tom. Trust me on that one. I know personally.
Absolutely.
It'd be a small paycheck, and yes, women will still come after you.
Yeah, Jimmy, but no, he brought up and you brought up a very interesting point, is how the transfer of values from the elders to the younger generation happened in the kitchen or when they were doing hair.
Yes.
There we go. Or so a lot of those small things that we don't really think about that unfortunately, Jimmy, has been replaced by the niceties of modern society, television, what you're looking at on social media, on your computer. And what that speaks to, Jimmy, in a lot of cases is that our families aren't spending the quality time that they used to anymore because everybody's racing and chasing the dollar. Unfortunately, because mothers are sometimes having to do it by themselves, they're working a couple of different jobs, or full-time and a part-time jobs, or even 2 full-time jobs in order to make ends meet because the father may not be contributing or for whatever other reasons. And as a result, the time that's being put in between the mother and the child is not happening. And therefore, that transfer of values, morals, principles isn't happening.
It's
But
not
Jimmy,
happening.
this is what happens also with the industrialization of society, because we understand what happened after World War II, where a lot of the men went to war. You had a lot of women who ended up taking jobs for the very first time. And then, we can talk about the next couple of decades in terms of the exorcism, for lack of a better term, the black man from the black household. And
The
so
war on poverty.
there we go. We have the disintegration of the family, where we were more rural, where you had the parents who lived very close to the grandparents who lived not too far from the grandparents. So even when the mother had responsibility for the child, if for whatever reason her and the father did not take things to full term, you still had aunts and uncles and grandparents and great-grandparents who are part of the equation, who was still helping to develop and groom and esteem that child. But because we have become urban now, because because we have become urban, you don't have that anymore. And so in this case, when a lot of our mothers are raising the child, if the father's not in the household, they don't have that hedge of protection around them to help provide that second and third layer of grooming and developing of the children. And so, not getting too far off task, because we want to make sure that we, with the, I guess, a little bit over 10 minutes now, dialogue in terms of what the black man owes the black woman. We've talked about protection. We've talked about esteem. We've talked about responsibility. Jimmy, let's close this out within the next 10 minutes so we can make sure that we wrap this up on time.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any more questions? Any more on the chat line? Or
I don't believe that we see anything else on the chat line. Let me see. Megan Thee Stallion was voted People's Choice, almost a role model. That is a problem in our mindset. Again, I'll repeat that. Megan Thee Stallion voted People's Choice. I don't know by who. It wasn't by me. Almost a role model.
Who is this person?
You've never heard of Megan Thee Stallion? Okay. I think we have another caller.
Okay.
Black men speak.
Hey, Tommy, what's happening, man?
How's everything going on, sir? Good to hear from you again.
All right. I'm good. I want to say hey to Jimmy. Jimmy, I'm going to send you a bottle of Robitussin and take care of that car.
Thank you, man. I need it. Man, the good stuff.
I had some notes, man, because when I riff, I tend to go into a rant sometimes. But I had some notes, but I'm going to forego the notes because I want to address something that was said. And I dig where you're coming from, but I want to go in a different direction.
Okay.
We talk about the woman in the kitchen, and transferring knowledge and things like that. I mean, who said that's a place for the women? Part of the problem is that young men, don't know how to cook for themselves. They can't even feed themselves. Like the sister said, the Nigerian writer, the sister said, the man is supposed to be the lead, but he can't even feed himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Wait just a second. Wait just a second. I'm going to actually pull somebody else in, but I'm going to tell them to hold while you're talking, okay?
Sure.
No, his point is right on point.
Black men speak.
Hello.
Hello, caller. We have. If I may ask a favor, we have a caller who is speaking right now. We're going to allow him to make his statement, and we're going to have you to hold until after he makes his statement and we respond, and then we're going to have you to contribute. Well, we're going to have both of you on line. Is that okay?
Don't hang up.
Don't hang up, though. Okay. All right, brother. I'll start. Keep up. Keep it up.
Man, you should let her talk. I like her voice.
All right.
No matchmaking now.
All right. Come on, let's continue with what you were saying.
So that's part of the problem is, young men can't even take care of themselves. We can't even feed ourselves, relying on a woman. yeah, so that's one thing. Another thing you said was like they transferred knowledge doing hair. There's another problem. They were frying each other's hair. Okay, we need to talk about that. That's, don't talk about a black woman about her hair or whatever. I will. You're frying your hair. Let's be clear. So, but the point is, the point is the transfer of knowledge. It doesn't have to be those antiquated venues. So it doesn't have to be the barbershop. It's the 21st century and we can develop more sophisticated avenues for us to transfer knowledge. And something very important you said in another episode, reevaluate. And that's what I'm talking about. We need to reevaluate roles. We need to reevaluate responsibility. And like the brother said, TP back in the day, it's a 50-50 love. Every brother is not an alpha male. You can be a beta male or a tertiary male. I don't care. There's a place for you, right? So every brother is not an alpha male. See what I'm saying? I'm just pushing back a little bit. I understand what you're saying. But I'm not going to put that on. Everybody doesn't want a relationship like that. I'm an alpha person. Let's be clear. But everybody's not an alpha person or an alpha male or an alpha female. We want people in healthy, respectful, productive relationships. And in this society where there's patriarchy and capitalism and all that kind of stuff, the old ways may not work. So we need to reevaluate your word. And I cling to that. Reevaluate, because that is the success of the human race, is the ability to adapt. But if we want to hang on to the old thing, then we're not going to progress. We're not going to progress. But in terms of what the question is on the table, what do we owe the African female? We owe her life. And as Jimmy said before, we have to be willing to die. The woman is the first teachers of our children, the purveyors of culture, the nurturers of our children. And if the African man is not willing to step forward and be willing to die, we need to have a talk. We need to have a serious talk. But I'm going to let the other caller come in because I want to hear a voice.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. All right, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for calling in. Okay, Ms. Hope, what say you?
Hi.
Hey.
There's so many complicated issues with our community. The black problem, as Du Bois talked about. I can't get into all of that. But as far as the topic goes, what black men owe black women, I think one thing you haven't talked about is allowing us to be angry sometimes, or allowing us to vent. That this whole idea of the angry black woman, and I do agree, there are a lot of black women with chips on their shoulders and baggage, and I can see how this life could lead to that. But for those of us black women that don't have a chip on our shoulder, or we don't bring baggage with us, we take each day as a new day, and we're optimistic. I see one of the problems that black men say is that, they're saying that black women aren't as positive and cheery as white women. And so my point is, we have the same problems that you all have. We go to work, we deal with racism, we deal with, racism when we're in a store or whatever. And so we have to come home having dealt with that, just like black men. And I've seen, in my past marriage, that was a big problem, that after the man, deals with the racist society at work, then he comes home and he vents a little bit, or takes that a little bit out at home. And the black woman is usually the person that, pacifies the man. But we also are dealing with that also. Maybe it's less. We have a little less of, problems from the outside world, but we still are. And so I see the problems with black men saying that black women are angry is that we do still have to deal with that also. Whereas sometimes when we talk about white women being better partners or being more positive, is because they don't have to deal with that.
Correct.
Everything, is in their favor.
Correct.
So, so that for a lot of the successful black men, and I would say, 40% of our most successful black men are with non-black women. I want them to remember that one of the reasons is that they feel like the non-black woman has such a positive attitude is because they're not dealing with that. And we need to all learn how to deal with that in a relationship. But that's something I think you owe it to us to know that we are dealing with the same issues that you're dealing with, and that we can't always be positive and cheery and how's your day, like white women are.
And also, before you drop, I want you to give us more information on this Megan Thee Stallion People's Choice thing. Jimmy's never heard of Megan Thee Stallion, so can you kind of...
Is that a wrestler or something?
No, Megan Thee
WWF?
Stallion. So Hope is going to explain who Megan Thee Stallion is and the
Okay.
influence that she has, which is the problematic issue.
Oh, well, when you all were saying about black women, the mothers act, sometimes the mothers, do have the same mindset. I was appalled that even when they had the People's Choice, that they chose Megan Thee Stallion as the #1 entertainer.
Who votes on the people?
She is a black female rapper from Houston.
Okay.
And she talks a lot about sex, but she talks a lot about it from a empowering standpoint, which she sees. Some people see it as empowering, but I don't see it that way. So she is seen as somewhat a feminist in that, she's talking about women getting pleasure from sex, women dominating, or women even using men for money, getting money for sex. And she is actually the #1 artist, and she was voted even the People's Choice. When they had a choice of picking which artist would be #1, she was picked as #1. She is, in her personal life, she is finishing her degree at TSU. On the other, she promised her, both her parents have passed away, and she promised her mother she would finish her degree. So on one hand, that's a positive thing that is always said that she's finishing college, even though she's, making millions of dollars. But on the other hand, it's kind of twisted the way they're seeing empowerment. She has a famous song with Cardi B called WAP. That's popular, and you can look up what it means.
Yeah.
You won't like it. And so she has been the #1 person this year, and she wears a lot of she's a very thick, like a stallion, and she wears very, skimpy outfits, but she's had a workout regimen that a lot of young women have gone through. But it's a twisted message. It's not a very ladylike message, I would say. So she says a lot of curse words, and she talks about sex very explicitly in her songs, and they have the #1 song, and I don't really think it's that brilliant of a song. It's not that sophisticated. She's very popular, and I don't think it's a good role model for black women. Even though I think the college part is good, but her actual message in the actual rap is not good. And she also, by the way, was shot in the foot throughout the year. She was shot by another singer named Tory Lanez, a rapper from Canada. That was a whole nother thing. She was shot in the foot, but she did not. She also did not prosecute him, which is like she was the whole thing with not snitching. She never prosecuted him. All she did was, what do you call it? Blocked him from Facebook or whatever you call it. Blocked from Instagram. So people thought that was good that she didn't snitch on him for shooting her in the foot, which I thought that was very twisted. That people were applauding her for that, and that was a way of taking up for a black man who actually shot you. So it's a lot of twisted things in the Gen Z generation that's going on, and that's kind of that's an example of different things that have gone on that that's like a role model for them.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Well,
got it.
thank you so much. Do you have any questions specifically? And we can definitely talk for a few minutes on this as we close out. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, well, I had asked you to recap. I was going to ask you to recap, but you recapped it. You said protection. I was asking you what the bullet points
Protection,
have been so far.
protection, esteem, and responsibility.
Okay.
I believe there was another one in there.
I was just adding, allowing the woman to deal with being a black woman in the society also, and not expecting her to be the superwoman all the time and to take everything and, be positive all the time, because, we're dealing with racism and discrimination. It's just, and then sexism too.
And I believe that you're right, and that is part of the reason, the primary reason why we crafted this show, because a lot of what we have discussed, and a lot of what we are seeing is because in a lot of too many cases, the black woman has done it by herself, and the reason that she's dealing with health issues, psychological issues, depression issues, is because in too many cases, the black man has not been pulling his fair share of the weight. So one, we want to open this can of worms, have a discussion about it, talk about what our responsibility as men is, to make it very clear that there are black men out here who understand and are very clear about our responsibility, but we've got some work to do in terms of being responsible, holding each other accountable, and being able to set the bar to ensure that our women, our families, our children, and our communities are as strong as they should be. Because quite frankly, the sisters can't do it by themselves. They can't continue to do it by themselves.
Well,
Yeah. One of the reasons I brought it up is because of the whole high value man discussion that Kevin Samuels is has so popularized.
Mm-hmm.
And me talking to high value men and having gone to colleges where there are a lot of black men who are very successful, and the black men that I know that exclusively date non-black women and don't even give black women a chance, is the main thing they all say is that black women are too angry and too negative, and they don't have a positive outlook like the other people. And so that's the reason why I'm bringing this up.
Gotcha.
Because of the men, the highest strata of men that some women aspire for. That is their main complaint as far as my survey has gone over the years. And
Gotcha.
so that's one thing I think, needs to be discussed is, that how can they expect us not to deal with some of the same things that they're dealing with. So
Okay.
that's
Well,
why I brought that up.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you all.
Okay, bye.
All right. So, Tom, caller made a couple of good points. One, I would suggest some of the things that Kevin says are probably on point. There's a lot, Tom, that he says is just outright insulting. And I'm not sure. I mean, he has a huge following of women, who continue to watch and listen to his comments as he insults them and put them down. That's not to say that everything he says is wrong. There are some things he say are quite correct, but there's a lot that has no value other than to insult, especially black women. The other thing, Tom, and this is where I want to close out with the caller's point, is that we need to make sure that you're giving yourself, black women, a chance to be successful. 100,000 years ago, the big brain African man and woman left the continent of Africa and populated the world. What those men and women found were other species of humanoids that we had to defeat and win out eventually. And there are certain traits that have allowed us to be successful as a people. Don't abandon those traits to be a feminist today. Because I can tell you right now, in the long run, it's going to turn men off. Real men don't want to be involved with another man unless they're gay or have some gay tendencies. Real women don't want men who are borderline girlfriends. They want real men. I mean, that's what they're naturally attracted to. You may find some fascination with short-term control over these people, being outside their roles. But deep down, what you really want is a real woman and a real man, in the more traditional sense, rather than the modern sense.
Yeah, Jimmy, I would agree with that, and I want to kind of speak to a couple of statements, and I'll do it very briefly for our callers.
Take your time.
I appreciate you guys calling in and expressing your opinions. I think those were great. In talking to Brother Asar, who called to talk about the transfer of knowledge, and I would agree with him. What I was speaking to were some traditional models of the transfer of knowledge.
Right.
Whether that be in the kitchen, whether that be in the hair. But the most important thing that I was speaking to is that the quality time, in more cases than not, is not being spent
Correct.
between the mother, between the father, and the children, which translates to the family history, the morals, the ethics, the principles, the values, and those types of things. Whether that's in the kitchen, whether that's doing hair, whether that's driving around the street, whether that's through sports, or whatever that happens to be. The issue is that we have to spend quality time with our children so that we can esteem them, because children, they hold out their hands in order to buy stuff when they go to the store. They want stuff when they go to the kitchen, but at the end of the day, they value and they spell love with T-I-M-E, not M-O-N-E-Y. You can buy all the gifts and trinkets for them, but you know what? If you're not going to their cheerleading practices, if you're not watching their games, if you're not supporting them, when they're growing up, all that money means absolutely nothing, because you still have no relationship with your children.
True.
And that is where we as fathers have to ensure that it's not just the mother who's going to the school and talking to the teachers. It's not just the mother who's going to the games. And that's the reason why the son is, when they get in the camera, they say, "Hey, Mom." Fathers have to step up and be in the lives of their children.
Great.
With T-I-M-E, not M-O-N-E-Y. And of course, Sister Hope was talking about Megan Thee Stallion, who I am somewhat familiar with. I don't know all of her songs, but I know that a lot of them, you can look at it the way you want to, but there is no way, and I don't know of any other community of people that would allow any one or small group of entertainers, artists, whatever you want to call them, to put out a message that systematically over-sexualizes and exploits the image of the woman within our community. But we also have to understand that mainstream media, people who control radio, television, and what's on the motion picture screen, spend billions of dollars in order to create this perverted image of the Black woman and the Black man. So we have to understand, analyze, and withdraw our support from these institutions that are destroying our community, that are destroying our queens, that are destroying our kings. I understand that you want to have a good time. I understand that the beat to the music may be good, but at what cost? Psychologically, because literally, let's be very clear, folks. This is warfare against This is warfare against people of African descent, and they're doing it psychologically, not just physically. They're not just shooting people in the street. They're not just abusing our women and our men. They are infiltrating our minds. There you go. Through psychology from the time they are children. And so you have these 4, 5, 8, 10-year-old girls who are listening to this stuff. They think it's cute. They dance to it. You have 4 little 5, 6, 7-year-old girls who are shaking their booty and who are literally presenting themselves as harlots.
Right. And
they don't know what they're doing. But at some point in time, they become young girls, adolescents, and young women, and it doesn't just go away. And then the last part is the Sister Hope talked about some of the most successful Black men, not all, a significant number of them are married to non-Black women, because they say that they're angry. They say that they're very anxious. They say that they have to deal with too much. Well, how is it that they got that way? One thing that a lot of these other women of other cultures have that a lot of our women don't is security.
Tom, we talked about the insecurity. That's correct. As far as the mindset.
So, exactly. When you are by yourself that creates a great deal of anxiety. When you don't have protection,
That's right.
you're having to raise your own fist. If you don't feel that there is there to support you, then you have to fight. That is the reason why we're having this dialogue today. That is the reason why we're having this conversation. And quite frankly, that is the reason why we're saying, here, I understand that everybody's not going to be an alpha male. But as males, we have to be part of the responsibility of protecting our women. Because quite frankly, if we are not protecting our women, if we are not esteeming our women, if we're not taking responsibility for our women, guess what? We're destroying ourselves.
That's true, Tom. She will never be the best version of herself under those conditions. She can be. There's no way psychologically she can be. And the powers that be know this. So part of the whole destruction process, destroy the mindset of the woman.
I understand. I mean, and for those of you who are in the scripture, they talk about the role of the man and the woman, biblically speaking, and we can go back and forth in terms of literal interpretations of the Bible or not, but we understand the power of the woman, and clearly we understand the power of the Black woman, who is the mother of all civilization, and the power and the influence that she has had worldwide. She is the beginning and she shall be the end. And we as men are responsible for protecting her and ensuring the prosperity of our culture and our people, and quite frankly, Jimmy, the human race.
That is true. That is true. So we have global responsibility if you really think about it, Tom. We always have. So this is why it's a joke when people try to make it seem that there's any place on this planet that we could be a stranger. We populated this planet. And so we need to understand our true history to appreciate who we are and what our role is. We're not some second, third class citizen on this planet. We are the first class citizen, the first class family on this planet. Without us, there wouldn't be a planet. Well, it may be here, but it wouldn't be very many smart people like us on it.
Gotcha. And Jimmy, we're the most peaceful people on earth, because I guarantee you, if we were not the most peaceful people on this earth, there would be a lot of other folks' blood on the ground and in the soil, considering how women have been attacked. But at the end of the day, as Malcolm said, you know what? We're very peaceful people. But if you want to see a brother who gets real violent, touch our woman. Put your filthy hands on our woman, and you got a problem on your hands. And that's what I'm talking about. Right. And that's all I'm talking about.
Well, Tom, we are the closest thing to divine on this planet. And we need to understand that. So, and understand our rightful place, and not take a back seat to anybody on this planet. So, Tom, with that being said, we need to, we're a few minutes over. So let's go ahead and close out with our prayer. We want to thank everyone for all the questions, the comments. Great show. Once again, you're the reason that we do this. And you're the reason we keep coming back to do more, because we enjoy the dialogue and the conversation. And hopefully, Tom, if we can just touch one person out of all of this, then it was worthwhile.
I would agree, Jimmy. So if everybody out there could humbly bow your heads, we will close out with a prayer. Dear Lord and gracious Father, we thank you for bringing us together as a family again. Father, we thank you for creating the human race, our ancestors, and the mother of our civilization and all humankind, the Black woman. Father, we ask that you would strengthen us. We ask that you would continue to protect us. We ask that you would continue to bless us with the inspiration to exceed everything that you have put within us at the DNA and the genetic level. Father, we ask that you would continue to lift us up as men and women, that we would work together, that we would partner together, that we would understand our greatness through you. Father, we ask that you would continue to protect, provide, and ensure, Father, that we understand your word within us that will live on earth as you have ordained in heaven, Father. And in your precious name we pray. Amen. Yep, absolutely, man. We got a lot of good feedback from last week's meeting. I had some friends of mine who had forwarded our show from last week to their friends. This was the one, of course, we talked about in terms of going back to school with COVID, because they, of course, they had folks with children in school, and so they were writing down notes, man, with what the doctor had to say and with what the principal had to say, both our frat brothers. So it turned out to be a very good show. So we just got to continue to fight the good fight. Yeah.